I'm Dr. Alvin Thomas. My work and this show is dedicated to educating, validating, elevating, and celebrating the importance of Black fatherhood. This is the Black Fatherhood Podcast. Welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of the Black Fatherhood Podcast. Last season, we focused on the research and academic aspects of Black fatherhood. This season, we're broadening our scope to include conversations with celebrated authors, artists, researchers, and thought leaders on the multitude of subjects surrounding Black fathers and families today. Our next guest has been named one of comedy's best journalists. Though he has achieved national acclaim and recognition, he has consistently used his media platform to spotlight and celebrate fatherhood. Today, we're speaking with a celebrated comedian, actor, and executive producer who grew up with the legacy of his equally celebrated father. We'll be talking about how his life is stitched to the life of his son and father, and how taking the good and the bad from your own experiences and being your own person can lead to resilience and begin a legacy for generations beyond yourself. Our guest is Roy Wood Jr. He's a comedian and correspondent on Comedy Central's The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, the host of two podcasts, Roy's Job Fair and Beyond the Scenes, and has written and starred in 3-hour-long stand-up comedy specials. He's appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman, Def Comedy Jam, Late Night with Seth Meyers, Conan, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and currently stars in the new movie Confess, Fletch. Earlier this year, Wood headlined the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He has also performed on numerous USO tours for our troops stationed everywhere from Guam to Iraq to the Philippines. Roy Wood Jr., welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Doing well. It's a little bit cloudy, misty today in Madison, not as hot as it was yesterday. And once it gets hot, it gets crazy, but enjoying it.
Yeah, you guys are a little a little insane over there. But then you also get extreme cold too, so more power to you.
So this being the Black Fatherhood Podcast, I wanted to start off just by asking you something that you talked about a number of times. You've been quoted as saying many times over, "I am a man of many fathers." What exactly do you mean by that?
I think that the composition of my life, and I can't speak for every man. Mm-hmm. My father died when I was 16. So when I say I'm the man of many fathers, I mean that I am the sum total of what lessons I gained from other men growing up that would have been conversations and lessons that I probably would have gotten from my father. But because he was gone, mm-hmm. I kind of got things a la carte. Got a little bit of self-confidence over here from this brother. Got a little bit of learning about dating in my 20s and 30s from these brothers, and learned about don't do drugs from these full brothers. So for me, I've been blessed enough to have a lot of men, Black men specifically, Black women too. Shout out to Adele Givens, who have, without me seeking it out, without me asking for it, they have chosen at particular times in my life to look out for me or throw me under their wing. And even if it's just for a moment or for a day, I appreciate those people. And those moments have never gone unnoticed or unappreciated.
Thank you very much, Roy. My work at the university and in this podcast explores the identities of men as fathers, male and Black. And you have proposed that there's an additional element running through the definition of what it means to be a man: commerce. Can you tell us more about the role that commerce plays in the identities of Black men and boys?
Well, I think that, and I don't know how much this should be this way, but it is this way in terms of a man being able to provide and to be able to do. To me, it's something that I'm very hesitant to instill that in my son, though I know at some point he's going to look back at my body of work and make an assessment of me as a father, and whether or not I did a good job towards him and whether or not I did a great job towards his mother. And I think that providing and being able to put a roof over her head, I think it is a privilege. It is a privilege. It is an honor to be able to carry that burden every day. But I do not think it's the sole measure of what we should look at a man being able to be. Because the problem, what I notice now with a lot of young men, I can't remember who said it, but, it might have been, was it Steve Harvey? Money doesn't mean nothing without women, because why else are you getting money but to provide?
I want to say Steve Harvey, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, no, it was Steve Harvey. It was Steve
him?
Harvey.
Okay.
It was Steve. He said it on Shannon Sharp's podcast. No. And so what I want to make sure, because I notice that there's a lot of commerce and flashiness in kids in their 20s. I'm 44 now. So, I went through my phase of trying to impress people with shiny things. But if you are the man that does not have those things yet, or you are the man that is not yet able to provide those things, it does not mean that you do not have worth. So I'm trying to make sure that my son understands and knows that his worth does not come down to commerce. It does not come down to just whether or not you can put a roof over something. Put a roof over your own head first, because sometimes it's about effort. Sometimes it's about growth. Sometimes it's about having drive. And to me, those things are just as important as actually being able to do something.
Yeah, that is powerful. I think often we talk about, and sometimes we dog youth about that flashiness that is kind of part of that phase, without really giving them the direction of what's supposed to come after that flashy phase. What should they be building during this flashy phase to allow them to be sustained beyond it?
Don't get down on yourself because someone else doesn't have. Mm-hmm. Like making sure that, like, I ain't gonna raise no player hater. Mm-hmm. I tell my son that all the time. I'm not raising no sheep, and I ain't raising no hater. Don't worry about what other people have. That's not for you. What's for you is for you. And in moments where he has something that he's enjoying or something that he's having a good time doing, it's about him looking around and recognizing that no one else has what he has, mm-hmm. but he's having a moment. But everybody gets to have a moment. There's an ebb and flow to this life. We talk about the weather and the rain being this euphemism for the cyclicalness of good and bad in life, and that, rain don't last forever. It can be bad. It can be a hurricane. It can be a torrential storm surge, but it ain't going to be forever. Yep. So you have to recognize that and take solace in that and use that to give you the strength to weather the storms that you're going to go through in life. And for the most part, it's a message I think he understands. And, in short term, kids are going to be kids. You at the park, he got the toy you don't have. You're going to stare at him. I'll go over there and ask him if you can play together. Right. Try and break the ice. But, I just think that parenting as a whole is just very difficult. And then fatherhood and raising a man is interesting because I have to think more about, like, the difference between me and my father and his father was that I believe that men up to 2 and 3 generations ago were given, your job as a parent was to give your kids the tools for survival. Here's how you don't die. Here's how you don't put yourself in a position where white people can kill you. Here's how to prepare yourself for racism. Here, go to college, because I couldn't go to college. I'm Mars, so you could go to college. Mm-hmm. So you going to college. Well, now I get to sit and help my son craft a world for himself and to prepare him for a world that, I don't necessarily know how they're going to receive him, but it's better than anybody else in his lineage will. But also the role of a man, is different now. It's evolving, and it always will evolve. But, the best you can do is just lay down examples for your kids.
So you talk about that cyclical nature of life and how the rains and the storms kind of come, but they don't last. They're precursors to something else that's coming on, and how you prepare yourself for that. And I think back, you talked earlier at the very beginning of the podcast, you talked about your father dying when you were a teenager. And I'm trying to think of Roy Wood Jr. as a teenager. You talked about upon his death, how you were faced with the challenge both of finishing school and having to support your family financially, and how that, I'm sure, was not a smooth ride. In fact, at one point you were arrested, and you've talked about how being arrested was probably one of the best things to ever happen to you. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, well, the arrest didn't come. That was for stealing credit cards in college. But even that was rooted in not wanting to be a burden on my mother. Because, when you're dealing with, at that point, a single mom, like like when you call and ask your mama for money, and you can just hear her just, okay, let me figure it out. And then I remember nights in high school. My dad died my senior year. I remember nights where I would be laying down and she thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. And I could hear her on the phone asking, like, making her money calls to her friends to keep this bill current, or to keep this bill out of disconnect, and that just lit a fire under me. I had a bit of a work ethic already because, with cancer, my father was already failing for the year before. So bills were kind of becoming, we were slowly getting up to our neck. We were taking on water as a home. So, that definitely, gave me a large degree of focus. Now, the arrest definitely gave me purpose, which is the difference, You can have tenacity, but if it ain't aimed towards nothing, you're just working hard just to work hard. But, what is the long game? And that gave me a long game of really wanting to set up real opportunities for myself, So that's when I started doing stand-up comedy, was when I was 19, because of that. But, I remember in high school, there was a stretch in high school, my senior year, where I was working 30 hours a week, which, violates every child labor law you can name. But what you gonna do? You gonna stop me?
Right.
My mom in law school, grad school, she's somewhere. What you gonna do? You gonna come take me from work that's helping me make money to relieve less stress in the house? So, you definitely don't want that for your child. I want to make sure that my son's not making decisions early on in his life that are based on needing money. But you don't want access to money to spoil someone. But the need for money and going out and seeking money at an age that's too early can be very scarring to a child's upbringing. It also, as I discovered much later in life, it can inform your work ethic.
Tell us a little bit about that, informing the work ethic.
Well, it puts you in a headspace of having to work, having to get money, because you always feel like there's something approaching there's going to be a fiscal problem on the horizon for you. So you must work constantly and hustle and grind and never sleep and all of that stuff.
It almost feels though there's that other element of the culture that thrives on that, or that pushes that message that you need to be always on a grind. You need to have multiple sources of income and multiple things that you're doing, and have your hand in all these different pots.
Yeah, but not to the sense of, you don't want to grind and grind and grind and there be no end game. You're grinding here to build this connection, to build that connection, and then you grow. And I think that's the issue that we lose track of, because we just work just to work. Right. And you work and you get your bills, and then you get to party on the weekend, and Monday, time to go back to work. But are you growing within that industry? Are you learning how to become a boss in that industry? Are you learning how to become more of a power player in that industry, you know, and that requires sometimes taking a step back from work ethic and looking at logic. And sometimes growth requires loss. So you may need to step back from something. You may need to take an L. You may need to move to Los Angeles and make less money than you were making in the South. You know, I had to do that, but I'm thankful I did, because that was all part of my growth.
So that almost sounds like the idea of grinding with purpose. And so I'm wondering, so your father, for example, Roy Wood Sr., was a renowned journalist, founder of the first national radio network owned by Black Americans. He was an embedded reporter in the front lines with Black platoons in Vietnam. He covered the South African Soweto riots and the civil war in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. And upon his return to the United States, he co-founded the National Black Network because he, quote unquote, wanted to tell Black stories. So it makes me wonder, do you think your father was, because that sounds like a lot of grind. Do you think
Correct.
that your father was grinding with purpose? Was there deliberate strategy in there? Or was it just, these are things that were happening and I needed to be there versus I'm planning this out?
No, but it was following his interests. These are the things that interest me. I think there's worth here. So what are the things that I can do to get to those places? To get in a position where you call your shots and choose to go be embedded in war means that you had to be the first Black in innumerable radio stations on your rise up to get the respect of white station owners who was going to green light you going over there to probably be killed anyway. You know, so I try my best, you know, from a place of work ethic and grind and discipline to get my son to make sure that, you know, it's important that we push through difficult times, you know, like the people talk about the difference between pain and injury, you know, you know, in the sense that, you know, not, well, he's 7, so I can't say pain. But
I was wondering how are you going to share that with him?
But this idea of I can't and assuming I can't, therefore why bother? And it's like, no, you can't because you've never done it enough. Anything worth doing, you have to do over and over and over. And once you put it in that context, it's like, boom. It's like, that's one of the things we always talk about, he and I, is that, you know, you have to be bad to be good. So you have to be terrible at something for a little while. But in those moments where you are terrible, you have to recognize that that rain ain't forever and that you should keep going and that you should keep pressing. And that's what my father did. You know, he dealt with a ton of racism. He could have went and got a factory job and called it a life. And that's not a disrespect to people who choose that path. But for my father, there was something that he wanted behind that wall of discrimination that he thought, that he felt was worth continuing through and fighting to do. And in doing so, he was able to be a beacon for a lot more people, hire a lot more people who to this day still work in journalism and are then themselves able to be beacons for other people. And to me, that's what it's all about.
So I'm not originally from the U.S. I'm not sure if you pick up the accent. I'm originally from the Caribbean. And when I came over and to attend Morehouse College, one of the first things that I heard about was Soul Train. And I kept like, Soul Train, like where do you catch this Soul Train? Like how, where does it take you? And then I heard Don Cornelius. And then as we were doing this research for this episode, I came across this snippet that essentially your father had a hand in Don Cornelius's career. And by extension, had influence over so many Black people in America and beyond because of the influence that Don Cornelius had on Soul Train.
Don Cornelius was a cop in Chicago, and he pulled my dad over, and my dad goes, "Man, you have a pretty nice voice. You should consider radio." And he gave Don his card. He still got the ticket because Don Cornelius is a hater. And, you know, he's a good cop. Right. And so, you know, he gave, you know, he hired Don, you know. I stopped short of saying that he gave Don Cornelius or that he made Don Cornelius. I mean, at the end of the day, My father saw someone that was talented and figured out, here, how can I help elevate this person? He didn't know Don Cornelius was going to come to the station and then learn radio, learn TV, and look at this whole world and then figure out how to be a game breaker in Black entertainment and Black positivity during the 70s, which is, Lord knows, when Black people needed it the most, because we were on the other side of the civil rights movement and the death of Dr. King. But, my father was, and that's definitely something that I try to do myself, is if I see some comedian, you look like you, hey, go call them and tell them I told you to call them. And then you see that comedian 5 years later, man, that call and that person put me on the thing that gave me the thing. And now I got 3 babies and I'm married. And I'm like, what? Like, okay, congratulations. But yeah, I just wish my dad would have took Don Cornelius up on being a partner in Soul Train. That's where we fumbled the bag.
It would have been a whole
Don
different
Cornelius,
story.
Yeah, man, he offered my pops a chance to be a partner in Soul Train. And my dad said, and I quote, "Don't nobody want to watch Black people dance for an hour."
Wow.
That's a terrible idea.
I mean, it sounds like a terrible idea back then, though.
But in my father's defense, you have to remember, this man in the past 8 years, Vietnam, King's assassination, and a couple years prior to that, he was in South Africa for the riots, and then he's in Zimbabwe and Rhodesia. So like the last 15, 20 years of his life has literally been Black war.
Right.
War. And then some dude come in your office, what if Black people dance to Smokey Robinson? If you don't get your ass out my office, we are at war. Yeah, I know, but I just think Black people deserve something like Dick Clark's. But Don Cornelius, shut your mouth and get up out my office. So in my pop's defense, I understand why the game went the way it went for him.
Yeah, it's amazing how the experiences that we have can sometimes color even our ability to see opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that when you talk about setting an example, the thing that I remember most about my father, and I think this is the thing that I think a lot of men can instill in their children, is a work ethic. Because it doesn't matter what you want to do. It doesn't matter what you're pursuing in life. You're going to have to be constant in how you pursue it. And there's going to be competition. So you have to out-pursue people. Like, it's non-negotiable. So, the one thing I try to never do in front of my son is quit something. I can get frustrated. And even through that, you're showing him the process. Man, we got a puzzle. We're up to like 800-piece puzzles. We do them together, but 800-piece puzzles is brutal.
You're better than I am.
But there's a process. There's a calm to it. If you can figure out chess, baseball, and jigsaw puzzles, you can figure out life. And so to me, the jigsaw puzzles represent this ability to remain calm, even when you're being ridiculously frustrated at something. And it teaches you attention to detail. It teaches you how to look at things like a puzzle piece. You literally have to rotate and literally have to look at from different ways and decide how that fits. And you can do the same thing with issues in this world. It's no different than what I do with my stand-up comedy. How can I take this topic and put it in a way that makes people listen to it without realizing that there's a little bit of a nugget of knowledge, underneath it?
I was telling somebody that I listened to your set at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I kept telling somebody that I didn't laugh much. Because for me, what I was listening for and it was hearing was it felt like I was listening to an iron fist in a velvet glove. So I was hearing all of the hits. I was hearing all of the really big issues that you were dealing with. And there was a little veneer of comedy over it. And I was kind of skipping over the comedy and just like, wow, it's like body shot after body shot to the American psyche, and hoping that people weren't just brushing off those body shots. And yet with the repeated body shots, I knew that people weren't necessarily able to brush them all off, because one of those was going to hit really hard. So I think now about how America is thinking about these body shots that they got at the correspondence dinner, and then thinking about not body shots to your son, but thinking a little bit about like how all of these lessons and experiences that you're trying to pass on to your son, he's only 7. Are you seeing anything that's suggesting to you, he's picking this up? He's getting it, or is this I am planting now and I'm hoping for the harvest down the road?
You plant, you don't know when things are going to hit. There's things my father said to me that didn't register until I was almost 30, but he said them,
yeah,
and it helped. So to me, I think it's very difficult, because parenting is a job that you're not even sure if you did it right until the kid is in their 20s.
Yeah.
Unless they're just getting expelled from school, then you bad. You're a terrible parent. But in terms of the making sure that my son understands the nuances of life and the little things, no, you don't know if any of that's going to hit until way later. For now, it's just about understanding that failure is a part of success. I think that is the most important thing that you can teach a child, at least early on, is that failing is important, and that how you deal with that, how you come out on the other side of that, that is life. Life is a repeated series of failures. And then every now and then there's a good day. Like that's what it is. And it's putting yourself in a position to not have those bad days as often as you would, as often as you used to. Mm-hmm. And it comes through preparation and strategy and attention to detail. But I don't, I stopped short of saying whether or not my son has grasped one thing or the other, because, kids evolve and you think they got it. And then the next thing you know is pee on the toilet seat mm-hmm. again. And it's like, I thought you were doing great with that right. for a long time. And now for no reason, you just so, it also is a battle as a parent to understand that you need patience, because you yourself have to make sure that you're not, well, why don't you get it? Mm. It's simple. You should just no, chill, just relax, just stay patient and enjoy the time you have with your children as well.
Yeah. So the idea of raising a black boy in America, I think you've said that, as a father, you're raising a black man. And the issue I have is that I want to treat him like a boy, but I'm raising him in a world that's going to treat him like a man long before he should be treated like a man. And I don't know the balance of letting him be a child versus giving him the life tools that he will need for the rest of his days. Talk with us a little bit about that weird space of trying to allow your son the space to be a boy, but also knowing that the world, as soon as he turns 10, if he looks bigger than a 10-year-old, he's going to start being treated like a man. How do you work? How do you reconcile those two realities?
You just have to prepare him for how to deal with people. Move slow, talk slow. In a lot of ways, people are like every other animal on this planet. Mm. If you move slow and talk softly, more often than not, that does not elicit, it's not read as aggression. Mm-hmm. And so the trick is trying to make sure that you are not being misunderstood by people who consider you a threat. But that's something that I cope with. But I just believe in making sure that my son has the belief that people are default good, or at least net positive. But he should, above all, be allowed to be a boy and be out and have fun and enjoy the world. And if someone calls you a word that throws you off your game, come home, we'll talk about ways to deal with it. But also, I'm going to let him know that there's just certain things, without getting into specifics, there's just going to be some people who are not going to like you.
Right.
And that ain't always rooted in race either.
Right.
That could just be a classmate. We're not talking about some random person in a store accusing him of theft. We're talking about just people in general in the world who may reject you for no reason, and you wanted to show them love.
Right.
There's nothing you can do about it. So here are the ways that we plot around that.
So I want to close our conversation by, one, respecting the legacy of your father, but also recognizing the legacy that you're laying down for your son. And as you've spent some of your life, I'm sure, emerging from your father's shadow, and probably still emerging from your father's shadow, thinking about... I don't
think I'll ever get out of it.
You don't think you're going to get out? So
nah.
If you can talk to us a little bit about how and what it would look like to emerge from your father's shadow, if you do want to, if you are able to, and then what do you think it's going to look like for your son trying to emerge out of Roy Wood Jr.'s shadow?
I think that your work is proof that you existed in a different way. The people you helped is proof. I think it is an honor to be able to operate as an extension of my father's own ideologies. For a long time, you don't want to be associated with, I'm my own person. Mm-hmm. Well, you are. You're funny. He wasn't. He attacked the issues in one way, you attack them in a different way. Whatever my son is to be, the thing that I thought I wanted, I ended up getting but not realizing it. You don't want to be out of your parents' shadow. What you want is to have a body of work that is not constantly compared to theirs. I've achieved that because what I do exists I'm in the same, like if my father and I, if our careers were in the grocery store, we're on the same aisle, mm-hmm. but we're not competing products. Mm-hmm. One's cereal, one's oatmeal. Like that's not the same, but it's both breakfast cereals.
Right.
So it's that, and, for my son, I hope that my son knows that he doesn't ever have to compare anything that he's ever done to anything I'm doing, And the people who try to, those people are short-sighted because they just can't see anything but one thing. So you just have to find your unique voice and your unique self. And in that, you will operate on your own aisle of the grocery store. You're an extension. You'll always be an extension. You'll always be your parents' children. Mm-hmm. There's nothing you can do to change that. But within that understanding, I think that so long as you're acting authentically in the things that interest you, you'll never be in anybody's shadow. If anything, you'll just be a new and improved version of them.
Man, I think you should get some wipes and a little thing to sit on and be like a little guru. Have people come sit at your feet and talk to me. Let me tell you what's going on with you.
No problem, man. But thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
Thank you so much, sir. Last year, I wrote an op-ed that brought together the story of the Williams sisters and their father, as well as the story of Oprah Winfrey in the eulogizing of her father, Vernon Winfrey, essentially talking about the legacy that Black fathers were creating and passing on to their children. Legacy, however, is not just what we pass on, which is what we just learned from Roy Wood Jr. Legacy is the foundation that we lay, the path that we cut, that makes it easier for our children to live out their full potential. Samuel Wood, Roy Wood Jr.'s third great-grandfather, William Wood, Roy, and now Roy Wood Jr. pass on to this new generation, Roy Wood Jr.'s son. That in itself is the essence, the meaning of life. That is love fleshed out. That is destiny. Fatherhood is an opportunity to reach across space and time to influence lives and spirit. Fatherhood is stitching lives, energy, and potentials to create destiny. Fathers, you are important. You are vital in your children's lives. You knit and stitch your life, your father's lives, your father's lives to the life of your child and your child's children. You create the new world by choosing to be the best father possible for the progeny that has been bequeathed to you. Go out there and be great. You've been listening to the Black Fatherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alvin Thomas. I'm a clinical psychologist, researcher, and the director of the TriLab at the University of Wisconsin-Madison's School of Human Ecology. Original music for our series was composed and performed by Micaiah De Silva. Our series producer is Joe Ruby. The podcast is supported by the School of Human Ecology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And you can follow me on Twitter at Dr_AT758. That's Dr_AT758. And on the web at thomaslab.humanecology.wisc.edu. Make sure to subscribe to the Black Fatherhood Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts.